age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. We're going to have a great show this morning. I'm going to be talking to you about 10 life-changing lessons about having a good financial plan and a good retirement plan. These are life-changing in that I have seen folks who delayed or didn't set up a plan, and what impact it had on them in reducing their lifestyle and reducing their options basically later in life. So the importance of a comprehensive plan, and I'm going to share with you some things for this morning that kind of tie into this. There was a household financial planning survey that was done by the Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some things put out by the Securities Division to help you in finding an advisor, ways that you can set up a plan. The basics, as I've covered in my book, 7 Steps to Financial Freedom and Retirement. Basically, it's about setting up that financial plan. How do you go about it? The importance of it. And I'm going to show you this morning, share with you these 10 life-changing lessons that you can take to heart, that you can put into place to make sure that you're going to get the most out of your retirement years. Again, it's about protecting that standard of living, that quality of life throughout your lifetime. And of course, you're welcome to join me here. 737-plus, 737-7587 is the number there on your screen. If you'd like to call in with any questions or comments or concerns that you might have with regard to your own planning. You know, biggest thing is an old adage that says that planning or failing to plan is planning to fail. A lot of times it's not, sometimes even the decisions that people make that get them in trouble. In other words, it's not that they made a decision that gets them in trouble, it's sometimes the lack of making decisions, the lack of taking action, in other words, that can get you in trouble. So let's talk about how can we in fact set up this financial plan and what the importance of it is. What do you get when you set up a financial plan? A lot of folks they come in to see me for the first time, they've got concerns, they want to make sure I'm not going to run out of money. I want to retire when I'm maybe 62, or can I retire early? Or can I retire even at full retirement age? Am I going to be able to retire at all? Am I going to have enough money to last throughout my lifetime for me, my spouse, my family? However it works out, these are the kinds of concerns most of the people that come in to see me have. And they're concerned about their investments. In today's market, they're saying, wow, things are looking pretty good, but I'm concerned. Are we set up for another bear market? I'm getting close to retirement age, or I'm in retirement. I'm not sure if I could handle another big drop in the market, what it might do to me. And we're going to talk about those kind of things, what the recovery periods typically are when the market does go through a bear period, how long it takes to get back to that break even and start making money again, and how you invest, how important that is in terms of what you're going to get with regard to your returns. And on that recovery, it's the same thing. Did you know that the average recovery time, when after, say, from the beginning of a bear market to the time when you get back to what you had at the beginning of that bear market, you might see anywhere from a 5 to 7 year time frame typically. But that's using the S&P 500 index as a guide. And I'll be talking about this a little further. But let's say if you had a diversified, well-diversified portfolio, utilizing the principle of asset allocation correctly, you could cut that time in half. So instead of 5 to 7 years, you may be looking more like 2 to 3 years. Okay, that can make a huge difference, again, in retirement. The other part of this, when it comes to these lessons on investing, you have to look not just at the recovery periods, but how much of your money should you have in the market? How much should you have in safe, guaranteed type things to protect you and give you the liquidity that you need so that you can, in fact, take on those ups and downs in the market and not have them completely throw your plan off kilter. All right, and put you behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So those are the things we're going to be covering today, and again, your questions are welcome as well. One of the things I'm going to do, and I haven't done this in a while, so I'm going to share with you something from my book that I think would help, again, in this regard. This has to do with the introduction. In the introduction of the book, one of the things that I go over is trying to point out, in particular today, all right, when we're looking at our history, we're looking at, for instance, what we maybe have seen over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and we try to equate that into planning for the future. It may help to go back a little further than that and see what really brought us to this point. One of my favorite quotes here in the book was Eleanor Roosevelt said, "Learn from the mistakes of others. You can't live long enough to make them all yourself." And this is the area of looking to the past to determine what we can from that can help us in our future planning. So one example, for instance, and I've talked about this before, when you look back in the 70s, and that's when we started to see this changeover from retirement plans like defined pension plans, where a person would work for 30, 40 years or more with a company and then retire and have, in fact, a pension that they could count on. And a lot of times with their pension and their Social Security, they would be able to live on that and even have money left over. Well, we don't see that as often today. It does happen. I had a client in just last week. That was the case. They're in a very good situation. They've been a good saver, so they're going to have some really great options for them when it comes to their planning. Back then, again, one of the things we would commonly see with our parents and grandparents is, again, it was a Social Security, it was a pension, and what savings they had typically was like a nest egg. It was like a safety net, if you will. They never intended to touch it. They rarely did, in fact, and it was more there just in case something catastrophic more so happened and they needed the money for that purpose. So, some things to keep in mind when you look at these things that occurred in the 70s with the passage of ERISA in 1974 and the Tax Revenue Act of 78. These are what brought into play retirement accounts. Today, they seem so commonplace, right? IRAs, and then, with the recent addition, recent being going back around 1999, 2000 range, with Roth IRAs. Then more recently, now adding Roth 401k options. But traditionally, we just had the 401k, we had traditional IRAs, you put your money in, you didn't have to pay tax on it, and when you took the money out later, you paid the tax at that time. And the concept was basically, back then, you were in about a 50%, if you made around 50 grand a year, for instance, you'd be in a 50% tax bracket. All right, so avoiding a 50% tax with the thought that when you retired, your income would probably be lower and that you would pay less in tax. And that worked out well for those folks, didn't it? For people at that point in time, tax rates today, if you make $50,000 a year, are 15%. So it's a huge difference in the brackets, all right? 1/3 of what it was then. However, how is that today? When you see high deficit spending, when our government spends way more than they're taking in, about $38,000 per household more per year than they're taking in, that's putting us more and more in the hole. All right, right now, I think the latest research I saw on this said that each and every household in the United States would have to pay something like $138,000 each of us to the federal government to take care of the debt. All right, well, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? How many people want to write a check for $138,000? How many people even could write a check for $138,000 to take care of that? And yet, that bill is there. It's going to have to be paid at some time. How is it going to get paid? All right. When tax rates today, as I mentioned, are 1/3 of what they were back in the 70s, then we've got to ask ourselves, with historically low tax rates and historically high debt, all right, what's the future of taxation? Are we going to see our tax rates go up? Good chance, wouldn't you say? Well, we're going to get into some more when we come back. One of the things that I want to cover here, again, we're going to be talking about the 10 life-changing lessons with regard to setting up a financial plan. And I'm going to get into some things from the study that I think will help enlighten you a little bit in terms of the difference between those that have a plan and those that don't. And we're going to talk about what the single largest benefit of having that comprehensive game plan is. And I'm going to have that up for you as soon as we come back. So join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.